Good evening, everyone. It's 6 o'clock, so this is the time for starting the League of Women Voters forum tonight for the Pismo Beach City Council candidates. My name is Alex Carlin. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, and I'm the moderator for the evening. And my job is basically to introduce the candidates briefly, and then to ask them the questions that you develop and you generate, and to try to moderate the proceeding. So I'll introduce them, and then I'll talk about the guidelines for tonight's proceeding, the way we're going to handle this matter. First, in terms of introduction, the candidates who are running for city council are Mary Ann Reese, Ms. Reese, Kevin Kwiatkowski, Kevin Kwiatkowski, Stacy Inman,
Hello.
and Eric Howell. And there is another candidate, I am told, who is running, who was unable to make it here today, Deborah Ann Lossing. So I will acknowledge her, but she was unable to make it. I'm not sure what the reasons were. We also want to thank the Pismo Beach Chamber of Commerce for sponsoring this event. They're the ones who arranged it, and Jeanette Vieira, the president, is here, as well as Judy Cotta, one of the treasurer for the Pismo Beach Chamber of Commerce. And thank you for arranging this and allowing the League of Women Voters to help moderate it. The guidelines, which I'll go through here in a moment, have been agreed to by all the candidates. We go over it with them ahead of time, and they all sign up to them. And they're pretty normal, what you might expect. The initial speaker was decided. We're going to go and ask questions and have opening statements. And the initial speaker was chosen by cards, by a lottery, as it were, and it will be Ms. Reese. She lost. She gets to do it first, and then it will rotate to the clockwise to the right. We may be pressed for time tonight. I'm not sure. It's kind of a function of how many questions you all raise and give to us, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And we want to give everyone a fair opportunity, each of the candidates a fair opportunity to answer each of the questions as much as they can. And so we're giving 3 minutes for an opening statement, each candidate. And then for the questions, there'll be 1.5 minutes for each question, for each of the candidates, and then a closing statement of 2 minutes at the end. Shelley Higginbotham is our timer. And she has these flags, or whatever. And she will give warning, 1 minute warning, 30-second warning, and stop. And stop means pretty much stop. Finish your sentence, and if it goes any more than that, I may have to ask you to turn it over to the next candidate. And if you can do it in less than the time allotted, that's even better. I'll apologize in advance if I need to interrupt anyone in that sort of way. The audience here tonight has the crucial role of the success and civility of this forum. Please allow each candidate to express their views and to discuss their approach to topics without interruption, without applauding at the end of any given question or answer. Save the applause till the end. Let's try to be respectful and non-disruptive and withhold all applause and reaction until the very end. The candidates, in the same vein, have agreed to abide by civility and decorum. No campaign literature, buttons, or that sort of thing they've agreed to be brought into the forum room. It's outside if you want to pick up some of that stuff. Some of the candidates have that. No demonstrations inside, that sort of thing, if you please. So please give us questions. We have a system for handling questions. I think many of you probably are familiar with it. We have runners. They're going to be their little 3x5 cards that everyone should have or can have, and they're handing out with pencils. If you want to ask a question, just raise your hand and they'll bring a card over to you. And then when you write it down, put one question per card, and the runners will bring them up. And our runners, volunteers from the League of Women Voters tonight, are Leslie Brown, Linda Busick, Nancy Hobson, and Valerie Steenson. And so they'll be here in the room circulating around. And please give us questions, because that's the meat of this discussion tonight, are the questions that you want to raise and ask of the candidates. Once the questions are generated, they're going to be brought up to the front here, and we have 3 sorters who go through the questions and compile them. And the sorters are Ed Cabrera, Joe Gusley, and Sharon Whitney. And what happens is lots of times we get kind of the same question asked 2 or 3 different ways. And so they'll sort through them and put those all in the pile together and maybe pick the best one. So if your own question doesn't get asked, please bear with us. Hopefully we'll cover all the topics and we'll get get the information out there. Well, in terms of logistics, Mary Lee Hyman has helped us here tonight, and please, as a logistical matter, please turn off your cell phones and mute them. The restrooms are outside in the back, so if you need to do that. We are being webcast tonight by AGP Video, and it will be on slow span, and the video will be recorded so you can watch it. Other people can watch it tomorrow if they want. The basic goal tonight is to provide a forum for the candidates to respond to questions and give voters as much information as possible about their positions and their candidacy. It's not really a debate. It's not a rally. It's just intended to be a civil discourse on the issues and the candidates. Once again, thanks to the Pismo Beach Chamber of Commerce and to the candidates and to you who have taken the time out to attend this and to ask questions and to help us with this process. So now I'll turn to the candidates and ask them to start with their opening statements of 3 minutes, starting with Ms. Reese. Ms. Reese?
Thank you to the Chamber and the League of Women Voters for sponsoring and moderating this forum tonight. Thank you to those that are here and those that are watching at home. I am very proud of the many projects that have been completed during the time I have served on the City Council. I'm particularly proud of the fact that you elected me as your first elected mayor. Prior to serving on the City Council, I had a career in executive management positions in the public sector, and I have a BA degree in public administration. Your trust allowed me to lead a citizen committee of 20 to evaluate a piece of property zoned to be a hotel, and now is Dinosaur Caves Park. I was part of a council that pushed through 4 phases of the boardwalk and had the foresight to expand the wastewater treatment plant and treat the waste beyond what is required to outfall into the ocean. These are just a few things that I was privileged to be part of. When we run for office, we are always asked, what are your priorities? I personally have 4 big ones, but most important is to listen to your priorities and to make those happen. Over the years, I continually hear from you that community character and quality of life for residents are most important. To that goal, we have completed beautification projects in the downtown and in Shell Beach, and have replaced play equipment in Dinosaur Caves and Spyglass Parks. We are now investing in neighborhoods and business districts with a $14+ million street paving project over 1/3 of the city, upgrading in Shumash and Palisade Park, beginning a streetscape project along James Way, adding tennis, basketball, pickleball courts. To further that goal, we are in the process of updating our general plan This may not sound very exciting, but it tells us where we have been, where we are now, and map out what our future should look like. We are all concerned about our water supply locally and in California. The present council has signed a regional water recycling project agreement with Aurora Grande and Grover Beach that will sustain our groundwater basins into the future. We have received $18+ million in state and federal grants for this project. And last but not least, we are in the process of designing a new public safety center that will house new and upgraded police and fire facilities. I would appreciate your vote.
Thank you. Mr. Kriowski?
Thank you. Anyway, I'm not going to bore you with too much background. A lot of you know me, grew up here, went to college here locally, left, joined the U.S. Border Patrol, spent 20+ years with them. So I was involved with a lot of upper-level administration later on in my career. Started as an agent, then a supervisor, then a second-line supervisor, then Deputy Assistant Regional Director for Western Region. So I've handled a lot of large budgets, managed personnel, large groups, and all the guys and gals that I managed had guns, so it was a little more challenging. And to bring them home every night safely was extremely important to me. After retiring, I started several small businesses here on the Central Coast. A couple art galleries, a bar. Every retired cop wants a bar. So, and retail, kayaks, you name it. Even ran a water taxi for a while. So I've seen that side of small business, been successful, and understand what it takes to be here on the Central Coast and be successful. During my time with the Border Patrol, I also volunteered to coach high school football and wrestling, sometimes both at the same time. And it was my way of giving back to sports that were good to me, treated me well. And so, in essence, not in essence, in reality, people ask me, why am I running? Well, I'm running because I want to give back to my community. All the issues that Marianne talked about are issues for all of us and things that we're going to have to take care of. So that's why we are here tonight. And I want to thank you for coming. This is important. I'm happy to see that you're taking interest in your city, which is important, and thank you for running. So anyway.
Thank you. Ms. Inman?
Thank you. I would also like to thank the League of Women Voters for giving us this opportunity to speak to the public and have it online, on the TVs, however it's accessible to everyone so that those that aren't here can see this. As I said, my name's Stacy Inman, and I'm a candidate for Pismo Beach City Council. Who am I? I'm a gal who's worked in public service her whole life. I've been a probation officer. I've been a district attorney prosecuting crimes. I've been a child protective services attorney. And I've been a school district attorney representing over 100 school districts. So I am quite used to the Brown Act, which is something that the City Council has to follow, as well as the Planning Commission, since I've advised school district boards for over 25 years in regard to the Brown Act. I am also a woman who knows about business. I have a BS degree in business administration. I have a JD in law, and I have been an assistant general counsel over a 20-person law firm for 23 years, 25 years, somewhere in there, and balanced a $3 million budget as part of that. I've also been a past treasurer, and I'm currently the vice chair of the Golden West chapter of the ALS Association, which covers 31 counties and the state of Hawaii, which has a $10 million budget. That has all been volunteer And it's all been since the year of 2000, since my husband was diagnosed with ALS. He unfortunately is no longer with us, but I went to the United States Congress, as did he, to change the Medicare law to help people with that horrible disease. And why do I tell you about that? I tell you about that because that's all public service, community service, and I want to bring that here, which I did as soon as I moved here in 2016. I got appointed to the Planning Commission. And for 3 of those years, I was chair. Why am I running? I'm concerned about our future. I'm concerned about our ability to conserve and sustain our water resources. We do have Central Coast Blue, and I'm so proud of our city for putting that together with 2 other cities, but it's going to be a minimum of 8 years to get that off the ground. Therefore, I think we need to look at desalinization for our future, and we need to study that. I'm also very concerned with parking and traffic in our fabulous city. It's extremely difficult to navigate downtown, especially in the summer months. Number 3, what is the most important thing most people talk about? Quality of life. We live in a beautiful location, but we need to care for our infrastructure and keep our city clean and productive for our residents and our visitors. For our visitors bring us so much money to provide for all these beautiful projects that we have going, as Ms. Reese commented. Additionally, we need more bicycle lanes and pedestrian walkways to allow us to walk, and ride, and ambulate throughout the city. I thank you and ask for your vote.
Thank you. Mr. Howell?
Thank you. And I too would like to thank the Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters for putting on this forum. It's a very important aspect of our democracy in terms of allowing people to get to know the candidates and not just through mailers or commercials. They need to hear from the candidates from their own words. I grew up here. I attended Oro Grande High School in 1985. I graduated and went to Harvard University and graduated from the University of Southern California Law School before returning home to Pismo Beach. And I was soon appointed to the Lucille Unified School District Board of Education. I served 17 years on that board, and during that time, I also volunteered as a Pismo Beach commissioner, and even then, traffic was an issue. In 2014, I was appointed by the governor to serve on the California Coastal Commission at the same time as I was serving on the Pismo Beach City Council. Anyone who's been watching the news lately realizes that the world's gone crazy, and we have challenges everywhere. And they don't just end at Avila Beach Road or at the Butterfly Grove. We have challenges here in Pismo Beach. With climate change, the state continues to put new housing requirements on us. We have homelessness, and unfortunately, we've developed some public safety issues that weren't always present here. I have experience. I have experience in the schools. I have experience as a council member for 8 years in Pismo Beach. I have experience at the state level with the Coastal Commission. Going forward, if we're going to be successful in Pismo Beach and protect our quality of life, I think it's important that it's not just learning on the job. We have somebody that with experience that knows how to solve problems.
Thank you. Now we'll turn to the questions.
I'm getting some text messages that the mic, Marianne's really hard to hear.
Okay.
Kevin was better. Stacy and Eric are clear, so you want to talk to them, move their mics closer.
Yeah. Apparently,
Marianne and Karen.
Ms. Reese, perhaps you could move your microphone a little closer. Apparently, there's some indication that they weren't picking you up quite as well.
Oh, no. Do I have to repeat myself?
Well, I don't know. And we'll have our AGP, I think they can help us with that. So I think we'll, just everyone try to speak a little closer to the mics if you would. Now we turn to the questions from the audience, and before I start with these, I just encourage everyone to keep bringing up questions if you have them, and we'll get them up here, because the We got 2 hours, and I think we ought to be able to cover a lot of good stuff in this time frame. The first question that has been selected is kind of, maybe we've got quite a few of them already. Um, all 4 of you have promised to protect our unique quality of life. What exactly is our unique quality of life? Mr. Kurowski, you start,
Nice.
and it goes around and clockwise.
Well, all you have to do is walk right outside and take a look at that view. Also, we enjoy more of a retirement community here, although we do raise our kids and they go to school here, they want to live here. It's tough at times because of the cost of living, but beach community, you just can't beat it. Wow, only a minute?
This is a minute and a half
All right,
here.
minute and a half. So there you have it. It's that unique, at the beach, quaint, small neighborhood where you know the people that are here. You know your neighbors.
Okay, great. Ms. Inman?
Yes. Many people come here for our unique quality of life. That's how we get such great employees. The things that I see that we need to protect are our ability to bike, ride, ambulate any way, hopefully out of our cars. This is one of the best places to live. Oprah said it about 10 years ago, which I didn't really want her to say that San Luis Obispo County was the best place because more people come, but we're so lucky. The view corridors are very, very critical. We always looked at that at the Planning Commission to make sure you could see to the ocean. There are parks, we have tennis, we have pickleball, the beach, the pier plaza, which is gorgeous. I think the most important thing is everyone, I believe, feels safe here, that you know your neighbors. You walk outside. When I've been walking on doors and knocking on doors, my cousin who came from Minnesota couldn't believe that it was so friendly, and to knock on doors and to know people and to have that front porch quality of life where you can speak to one another and have a good existence together.
Great. Mr. Howell?
Thank you. I think I tend to agree with both of the previous speakers. Our sense of community is our sense of neighborhood. The fact that we are all neighbors, that we do speak to each other. The streets are by and large safe. We need responsible growth. We have open space, and we need to protect that open space going forward. I think we need responsible growth. We don't need to continue to annex. We need to build in ways that's most effective for our community while still keeping this place affordable. I'm concerned about the loss of beach, and I'm concerned about clean air, and we need to do something to take care of parking and traffic.
Okay, great. Ms. Reese?
Well, most everyone has talked about the things that I would say makes us unique. I think we have more parks in our community than most communities our size. And it's true, each of our neighborhoods are very close. We all know each other. We speak to each other as we walk out the door. We have the beaches, we have hiking trails, we have Pismo Preserve. We just have a blend that reaches everybody, for the kids, for the seniors, and we have everything. And we have a blend of good commercial, our grocery stores, our restaurants. It's just about a perfect blend, besides what we've been gifted with our beach and our ocean and our climate.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you. Second question, and this one will start with Ms. Inman. The question is, if elected, what would be your first priority as a city council member?
My first priority would be what I've already said, which is drilling down even farther on water. And I know there's been a lot of time and effort put toward it, especially with Central Coast Blue, which just was agreed to on just last night. and, or 2 nights ago. But we're in a critical water storage situation. Lake Lopez is down to 23.7%. We're only going to get 5% of the state water allocation, and the salt water is intruding because of the Santa Maria Basin is so low. So I think we have to look beyond just Central Coast Blue. I think we really need to look at desalination, and I know that the Board of Supervisors are going to be looking at that later this month, and perhaps we can tie into Diablo Canyon Power Plant, which already has a desalination plant, and it's not 100% used to my knowledge. So that is the #1 priority. It doesn't mean I have all the answers. It means I think we need to study it because I'm not an engineer, but I do know how to take facts and apply them to information and sift through them to protect our future generations. I want to worry about my son and his children to come. So that is my #1 issue.
Good, thank you. Mr. Howell?
Thank you. I would agree, water right now is a critical concern for every community here. Central Coast Blue is going to be a huge asset to the entire South County, and I'm proud of my work on Central Coast Blue, but I think we need to go further in terms of cooperating with our neighboring cities. We need to have the ability to transfer water between different communities. The water basin doesn't end at the city limits. It's in Arroyo Grande, it's in Grover, it's in Oceano, and goes clear to the Santa Maria River. So we need to work with our surrounding cities to maximize our savings, and that may include storing state water that technically belongs to Pismo Beach into Lopez Lake in order to keep it an effective storage unit. Otherwise, we're going to hit a dead pool, and Lopez will not be of any use to anyone.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Reese?
I would agree. Water is our biggest issue, as it is all over California. We're really in trouble. Central Coast Blue is a real good beginning for us, and partnering with the other cities is key. That'll be up and running within 3 years. I think we should be looking at every resource we could possibly look at. Desalination, we should look at. It'll be a long time coming, though. There's a lot of permitting issues, a lot of environmental issues, and I'm not sure how soon it could get off the ground. But water is our hugest issue, and I think that we really need to just keep working on it, and I'm looking forward to working with the other cities on Central Coast Blue.
Okay, great. Mr. Krajewski?
I agree. I echo the same. I'm a little frustrated, though, because when I had that bar out at Port San Luis, the men and women that worked at the desal plant would always come in and have a cocktail and talk to me about that desal. And I've been, since I ran for mayor in 2014, I've been talking about that desal plant and that we should do something. And when they were talking about shutting down the plant, I thought, right there, that's our opportunity. But nothing seems to have transpired. Now, I understand that it is expensive, but we're at a crisis level. My other point that I'm frustrated about is our gray water. Call it blue, call it gray. We have a plant, and we have not taken the time to pipe, to even water our parks with gray water. Our baseball field, from what I understand, don't hold me too tight to it, I don't think is using gray water to water their fields, and it's right next to the plant. Excuse me. So, you know, we need to take action, and the problem is we have not taken action, and so it's time. We are at a crisis level.
Okay, thank you. Next question, this one will start with Mr. Howell, and it is, what is your opinion of the proposed traffic lane on Highway 101 near Spyglass?
Having just returned from San Luis Obispo, I think to a certain extent is that traffic lane is already in place. People are currently using the shoulder lane as the turn lane. I think everything we can do to help mitigate the traffic issues there, we should be doing. And I don't know how this became such a choke point in the county, but it's not good. It's not good for commuters, it's not good for our carbon footprint, it's not good for anybody. Ultimately, though, is we're not going to be able to build our way out of any traffic issues. We're going to need to come up with different ways of using public transportation and get people out of their cars going into San Luis Obispo and going home into the South County in Santa Maria.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Reese?
Well, the particular lane that you're talking about, I'm thinking that when I was mayor, it was supposed to be a lane that went all the way through to Spyglass, and somehow it ended up being a climbing lane, and it ended before it should have. However, I think the plan is to have similar lanes that could be used in case of emergency. So when we have an accident in that, they can kind of move the traffic through with that additional lane. So I look forward to that. I don't think it's the total answer. I think we really need 6 lanes, long range, but I think it's a temporary fix. But in terms of that lane, it should have gone all the way through to Spyglass, and it was very disappointing to me that it did not.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Krowski?
Yeah, again, agreed. The planning of that was, let me see how I can clean this up a little bit, was not done correctly. And now we have it, and we have turned down, my understanding, some work offered to expand the freeway in the past, and now we're way behind. We're as far as on the list for work on the freeway. So we're gonna have to deal with that. I agree with Eric. You know, we're gonna have to work on our transportation, bicycle lanes, the whole 9 yards. But the traffic that's coming from San Luis is workforce traffic going back to Santa Maria. So that's a tough one. So, you know, again, we're gonna have to take a closer look and get together with the state to see what we can do to motivate them and get us up on the list so we can get more lanes on that freeway.
Okay. Ms. Inman?
Yes, I appreciate the proposed lane that's going to be added, or what the configuration is, because it's needed. And I too, when I first, it was a long time ago, but when I first saw that lane coming into Spyglass, I called it the phantom lane because it tricks you. You know, people that aren't from here think, oh, it's going to go all the way to Spyglass, and then it cuts off right before it gets there. And so that's really doesn't help anyone. And I really think we should work with the state to at least complete that to all the way to Spyglass. The other thing is, the beauty of the ocean is what happens. I think that's one of the main things. You come around that corner and you see the beauty of the ocean, everyone's eyes goes to that, and that's why the view corridors are so important to Pismo Beach. So we need to protect the view corridors, but the proposed lane is important, but also finding other ways of bettering the transportation systems is critical, because there is workforce traffic. And that's not going to change, and people coming to Pismo Beach isn't going to change. People love it here. So
Okay, thank you. Next question will be to Ms. Reese, starting, and this one is, how will you ensure Central Coast Blue stays on track?
Well, we will be the agency that will be, we're the lead agency. And so I think this council is committed to moving it forward, and I can't imagine that we would let it slow down. I mean, we are the lead agency. I think that we've been the guiding force so far, and we'll keep moving it forward.
Okay, Mr. Krowski?
Well, I've had the pleasure to reacquaint myself with a lot of our department heads, and I have faith that they will do a good job. We have some of the best in the state, shoot, in the country as far as that goes. So as far as staying on top of it, I still personally have concerns as far as the science behind it and, you know, will it be successful? So I would like to, you know, motivate our crews to stay on top of it because, you know, pumping water in the ground, and as Eric pointed out, there's several aquifers that are all part of the 5 cities, all part of, you know, the Central Coast. So it'll be interesting, and yes, we need to stay on top of it for sure, and we have a good crew to do that.
Ms. Inman?
Yes. This city, when this city wants to get something done, it happens. And so I believe that as a council member, I've seen the council work. I know that once I'm committed to something, it happens. So I'm sure there would be a monthly or every 2 months report on what the status is, since Pismo Beach is the lead agency, what needs to happen, are we following the procedures that need to go into place, do we have all the funding? I know there has to be the JPA language has to be worked out now since it's a joint powers agency, and so the lawyers have to get involved to write that up because it's going to be a separate entity with separate staff, and so all of that needs to occur before our city can start moving forward. So that's critical, but we do have great staff. The city manager, Jim Lewis, and Ben Fine and Matt Downing, I know that they will be watching it, taking care of it, making sure it stays on task. In fact, one of the most recent projects, I believe it was the water tank, only had one changeover, which was a minor thing. So when our city concentrates on something and they're in charge, it will happen on the pace it needs to happen.
Thank you. Mr. Howell?
Thank you. You know, the nice thing is that Pismo Beach doesn't need to recreate the wheel. There are many recycled water projects up and down the state, and I know that our staff in Pismo have been cooperating with Monterey Bay, for example. When I've gone and visited their recycled water project, they spoke extensively with me about what the mistakes that they made and the mistakes that they're going to make certain Pismo Beach doesn't make. So I'm glad to see that the city is cooperating and collaborating with these other outside agencies. I also think it's important that we have enough workers and the people that have the right skills are going to be here so that it doesn't get held up because we don't have anyone that knows how to do it. I am in favor of community workforce agreements to make sure that we've got the right experts and the right workers for it. And I'm happy that we've been able to secure the funding from the state and the federal government for this project. I don't doubt for a second that with some effort and some diligence that Central Coast Blue will be on time and successful.
Great. Okay, thank you. Next question, this will go to Mr. Kriowski, starting. How will you support the Chamber of Commerce?
Fund them fully.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay. No, please, let's not have applause, even from the chamber, who is a sponsor here tonight. They're cheating. They're not allowed to do that. Ms. Inman?
I support the Chamber of Commerce in 2 ways. I have 2 different memberships. One is being an attorney and one is being a candidate. So that's the way I personally support, but the city needs to support because it's an arm of the city, and it's critical that the businesses are supported and that we work together with the chamber in how to produce good things for the businesses here, because if the businesses cannot thrive, then the city's not going to thrive. And when people come, residents and visitors, they expect to have services, food, retail, all sorts of things. So it's critical that we have a thriving economic environment, and I want to ensure that we work directly with them in a positive way.
Great, okay. Mr. Howell?
Thank you. As a council member, I had a warm and friendly relationship with the Chamber of Commerce. They are our friends and partners. Business is important to the city, and I would anticipate that that relationship would continue.
Okay. Ms. Reese?
Okay, I have belonged to the chamber ever since I moved to Pismo Beach, was almost 30 years ago, so it's close to my heart. My husband was very active in it right from the very beginning. As a council, we've always been supportive, both financially and in other ways, with all the activities that the chamber has going on. They do a great job keeping the businesses informed. They always come to us with issues so that we can help resolve it. I just see us continuing to do that in the future. And we've always financially supported them, and I think that's really important to them and the businesses in town.
Okay, thank you. Next question, Ms. Inman, we'll start with you on this one. What is your position on mandating the addition of sidewalks for new residential home construction, even if the flow seems wrong?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is I'd like to correct something I said in the last thing. So my two memberships as an attorney and a candidate was actually for the South County Chamber of Commerce. And so I know the treasurer and the president's here, and so I wanted to make sure they knew that, and I'll sign up for my other one tonight. I just want to make sure that I don't fail in that. Mandating the addition of sidewalks. I believe that unless there's an unusual reason there shouldn't be a sidewalk, I believe they should be mandated by the developer. I mean, we should mandate them so that when a development occurs, the city has sidewalks. I've heard many, many times when I'm knocking on doors, talking to people, their unhappiness with the fact that the city tells the residents that they are responsible for their own sidewalks in front of their house, and that the city will not repair or replace them. And so we do have a lot of sidewalks here, not everywhere, not where I live, but for new development, I think it's critical to have sidewalks. Now, if you're going up the hill, maybe that's not a logical thing, and maybe we need to do a case-by-case basis. If you're up at the top of Pismo Heights, that's a place where I can see it's not logical. It would have to be engineered and things of that nature, but I would say generally, as a general rule, developers should be required to put in sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Howell?
Thank you. As a general rule, I too think that sidewalks should be mandated. Certainly, when they make no sense at all, then no. But I think that the burden is on the developer to indicate why sidewalks shouldn't be appropriate. I also think that the city as a whole needs to come up with a plan for how we are going to provide sidewalks everywhere. I'm really proud of the sidewalks that are in, at this point, on Ocean Boulevard that were part of the project for putting in the new stairs. And when that issue was in front of the Coastal Commission for putting in the stairs and the seawalls there and to protect Ocean Boulevard, one of the additions that we insisted on, meaning the city, was we also want the permit for putting in these sidewalks because we need more public access.
Very good. Ms. Reese?
I think it's really important for new development to be required to have sidewalks. The issue here in Pismo Beach, there's neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks. And so if you have a new house being built and you're requiring a sidewalk, it might be a lonely sidewalk in the middle of the block, and the rest of it would never be contracted out. So I think you have to look at neighborhood by neighborhood. Is it really practical to require a sidewalk in every instance? Probably not. So, but as a general rule, I would agree we should require sidewalks.
Okay. Mr. Kriowski?
Yes, and I agree with Marianne. If we're doing a development, if there's a big development, then yes, sidewalks everywhere. Old Shell Beach, Palisades, like El Portal, all the streets up and down Old Shell Beach, that doing a random sidewalk that's, going nowhere makes no sense. And if we want to have sidewalks, then we, as a city, need to go there and put the sidewalks in like we're doing down by the stairs. So again, case by case, street by street, but we own the sidewalks, or the city owns the property, so we need to take responsibility for it.
Okay, great. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Howell. I think that's where we are in the lineup. What changes need to be made in the short-term vacation rental ordinance?
Well, first and foremost is I'm glad that we have a short-term vacation rental ordinance. There's many cities and counties in the state who have not been able to get a short-term vacation rental ordinance past the Coastal Commission. So I'm proud that we were able to get an ordinance in place. Where I think we might be falling short is the enforcement of some of the provisions of the short-term vacation rentals. So whereas we went from having hundreds of short-term vacation rentals that were unregulated in Pismo Beach, we now went to, right now, I think 25, maybe 30 ones that are licensed. And then we still have some ones that are out there that aren't complying with the rules. And we need to get much better at enforcing the rules. And we do have a new enforcement officer, and we need to look closer at making sure that that everyone's complying with the regulations and paying their TOT to the city, the hotel tax.
Okay. Ms. Reese?
Okay, I think right now, we're receiving complaints with the fact that we're renewing permits in cases where we've had complaints. So I think that's probably one area that we'd have to change our ordinance. I think secondly, we need more enforcement because right now we're really relying on complaints in the neighborhood, really, and that's really not appropriate. So we should be, enforcing our ordinance more so. I think we ought to limit the numbers that we have right now. I think the Shell Beach is really getting the brunt of the numbers that we have now. So those are some of the things that I think need to be changed.
All right, Mr. Kurowski.
Yeah, the key is residential versus commercial residential. On the strip in Old Shell Beach and in downtown Pismo, you have commercial residential, which, that's, in my opinion, that's the place to have your Airbnb. The 25 permits we have, again, if we're going to do that, if we're going to allow that in residential neighborhoods, then we need enforcement. It's just like what I used to do on the border. We have the laws on the books, but we weren't enforcing those laws. So if we're going to allow 25, if we're going to allow Airbnb in residential neighborhoods, then we have to have code enforcement officers that are going to stay after it. And there are other ways, other things, furnish finders, traveling nurses. There's other things to possibly convince the people that are hooked on Airbnb to change their opinion on, Airbnb, so to speak. So there's other ideas, there's other things, but enforcement is key. And look at our zoning. If we're in a residential neighborhood, then it's a residential neighborhood.
All right, thank you. Ms. Inman?
Yes, thank you. I was very proud to be chair of the Planning Commission when this city put through the first short-term rental ordinance. And it was one of the first, if not the first, that was approved by the California Coastal Commission. However, there weren't enough parameters to protect the city from the people that will not protect the communities and don't care about the people on either side of their home that allow for the short-term rentals. There's a moratorium right now, I believe, until June, April or June of next year, and there are actually 28 permits of short-term rentals, and I would recommend a 2 or 3 year waiting period so that a person who says it's their primary residence has to have at least a year, if not two, living there as a primary residence, because many people can buy a home and say it's their primary residence, but they haven't lived there for any period of time to show that they intend that it's their primary residence, and then rent it out for half of that time period. I'd also be concerned that that people in Shell Beach, the general plan and local coastal plan, that we're going to change that to a village commercial. It's going to be different than downtown commercial. People in Shell Beach do not want short-term rentals along Shell Beach Road, and so that is a non-starter. And we need to protect that area as well as have the enforcement and a higher fine. If homes are $900 a day, the fine should be at least that.
Thank you. Next question, number 8. We'll start with Ms. Reese, I
Okay.
believe. What is your vision for the Chapman House estate?
Well, I think that we probably, as a city, did a good thing by accepting the house and the estate. I think that eventually it will become self-supporting. I think the foundation is doing an excellent job. This last fundraiser brought in $105,000. I see I visualize the city is utilizing it for small events, and us being able to get a lot of the repairs done and the upgrading. When we received it, it was really needed a lot of work, and little by little, between the foundation and the city, we've accomplished a lot of that. But I do see it being self-supporting in the near future.
Okay, great. Mr. Kriowski.
Well, I love history, and the Chapman House is huge when it comes to history. Hopefully Effie is not in the audience, so she'll probably, is she over there? Oh, there she is, okay. All right, I'll back off on how much history I know of the Chapman House then. But I had a chance to meet with the foundation. You know, it is what it is right now. And my ideas are, number one, to get it certified historically with state, if not, federal. And there's got to be a way to do it. Anyway, put me on it. But the other thing is grant writing. After we get it certified historically, or even while we're doing that, is to get grants to pay for it, because it is not cheap. I think the roof costs like 600 and, what was it, 650? Anyway, so it wasn't cheap. So we need to raise the money to take care of it. And Foundation's doing a great job, but we need to make more money to support it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Inman.
This is one of the most difficult topics, I believe, for many in the city. When I first came here full-time, I've owned a home here for over 20 years, I asked what the budget was, and I never got an answer, and that was back in 2016. And it's hard to find out what the budget is for the Chapman House. It's an amazing, beautiful place, a mansion for Shell Beach, as it were. But it's a person's home that they gave to a city to try and keep it the way it was or upgrade it. And I worry about the cost of the roof. I asked about ADA accessibility the minute I got here, and there still isn't ADA accessibility. My husband was in a wheelchair. He could never get in there. If someone with a wheelchair wanted to go there, they couldn't get in. So it's possible for lawsuits. Anyway, my concern is I think we have to look at the money. We need to look at the cost of the seawall, which is $1 to $3 million. And we have to reconcile whether that's what the city wants to keep. And I think we need to seek all the information and ask the residents if they want to keep it or not, because I'm not sure how many residents actually access it, to use it. It's beautiful, but who accesses it? Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Howell.
Thank you. I agree with Ms. Inman regarding more people needing to use the Chapman House. I think it is a gem for Pismo Beach and an incredible gift. I'd like to see an awful lot more use. And I think it's really not fair to ask how much, we don't ask how much the Dinosaur Caves is costing. We don't ask how much Shumash Park is costing. You know, we look at what our community needs and wants. And I think that the city should be investing in making the Chapman House more accessible, more available to everybody. I think it's fantastic that we have a shuttle that brings in people for big events. The foundation's doing an incredible job and have totally hit their stride, especially this year. I was at the event, I mean, it's $120,000 and counting on the money that they raised. We can also help pay for the seawall by applying for Coastal Conservancy grants, and I don't think that's going to be a hard sell for the Coastal Conservancy in terms of protecting something as valuable as the Chapman House.
Okay, thank you. Next question, Mr. Kurowski, we start with you. Would you like to see more candidate forums?
Oh, yay, yeah. No,
What can you say?
I do, well, no, I do think they're good. Again, and I have to point to Effie because we ran into each other on the street, and the one thing she told me, she said, you know, yeah, Kevin, you're a nice guy, but no one knows, you know, your stance on anything. And I said, well, you know, then we need to do some things. And I told Effie about, you know, this forum. And yes, more forums would be great. You need to get to know your candidates and see what you think about them. And then, you know, but as well as the forums, you need to reach out and contact your candidates. In other words, if they put a phone number down and you have questions, give them a call and or email. So yes.
Good, okay. Ms. Inman?
I presume this means more candidate forums for Pismo Beach and not for the area. I think it's always good to have candidate forums in any place where there's contested elections. I have more success, it seems, trying to meet people at their homes. I'm as happy as a clam, there you go, to have as many forums as are necessary and what people want. But this is being recorded and people can see this, and you can ask us as many questions till 8 o'clock as you want, and then hopefully people will reach out to us. Stacy Inman for citycouncil.com. There you go. Either way, I'll do whatever the people of Pismo Beach want us to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Howell?
Thank you. I am absolutely in favor of more forums, but I think it's important that we have a lot of different ways that people can interact with the candidates. Of course, you know, pick up the phone on the mailers, and you'll find phone numbers, you'll find people's emails, and interact with them that way. We in Shell Beach, we used to have the meet and greets at that gorgeous church up from the Vets Hall, where we had candidates from all over the state who were here, from governor and senator on down, who came, and lots of people need to interact different ways with their candidates. It's great that it's on TV. It's great that people in the audience here can ask us questions, but it's also not the same as taking somebody aside and saying, okay, Kevin, you know, what is up with your view on the seawalls? I mean, it's different, and I'd like to see, if we can possibly pull it off, more ways that are informal, where people can interact with the candidates.
I would agree that the forums are very useful. I think they really, if the public begins to know who we are. But having been on the council, I prefer being able to talk to people one-on-one, or when we have an item on the agenda, to maybe have a workshop with the community so that we can really get their input as we're making decisions. But during the campaign process, when you're walking door to door, that's an opportunity. but the forums are the easiest, I think, for people to get to because it is recorded. They can watch it later at home.
Great. Okay, thank you. And in that vein, it's about 7 o'clock right now, and you guys have been on the hot seat for an hour, and everyone has been quite patient here in the audience. Maybe we ought to take, with your permission, a 10-minute break to allow you to have one-on-one interaction with the people in the audience, or do whatever you need to do.
Okay.
And we'll reconvene. We'll use that clock in the back as the official clock, and I guess around 7:12 or something like. Make it 10 minutes. Let's get back together, if that's all right. Thank you. Yes, thank you. We'll now reconvene the candidates forum for the City Council of Pismo Beach. We are, I think Ms. Inman is the hot seat question for the first one here. And this one is, housing is in short supply and too costly for most people. What can the city do to provide more housing?
Well, wow. Excuse me. I'm really loud. But the city has done some things. When I was on the plan commission, we approved 2 different projects, which is on Forest Street. There's a 50-person affordable housing apartments that are going in right now. That's being constructed right now. And then there's a 25-person senior housing just south of DePaulo's on Spyglass and Shell Beach Road. So projects like that are going to help our workforce, and we can look to people that own property that have a inkling or a desire to help in this area where they'll have more affordable housing. I specifically have talked to 2 different people who own property in the area that are contemplating making a project where they would have some condos, some apartments, but high-end, mid-end, affordable housing so that all different wage earners can have accessibility. So we need to look at what we have. We need to repurpose other places, especially for landowners that are willing to provide more affordable housing. So I think we should just have our ear to the ground and work on that for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Howell.
Thank you. Well, first and foremost, housing affordability is clearly not just a Pismo Beach issue. It's an issue statewide, countywide, and South County-wide as well. I think we need to work collaboratively with our neighboring communities to see how we can provide affordable housing as a community, because none of us are islands. I'm also a big fan of home share. When home share was coming to, which is people who are typically house rich, but I'm not phrasing it right. Basically is people that have a lot of room in their homes and on their lands to divvy it up and bring in ADU type things, or people that are housing poor. And I think that we should be helping out with home share and contributing money to that program. I think that'll help. We also need to make public transportation something that's actually effective. I mean, in Shell Beach, if you wanted to go to San Luis Obispo, you would have some problems. It goes one way on one side of the freeway in the morning and the other side of the freeway in the afternoon. We need to make public transportation more viable if we're going to have denser housing. We also need to make biking easier, so we need more trails for that isn't just for recreation.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. Ms. Reese.
Okay, someone already discussed the 2 projects that we have going on now. Is this loud now? There's one going in on 4th Street and then the senior housing on Shell Beach Road. And early on in my tenure on the city council, we had a project, I believe, down near, I can't remember the name of the street, but it's more downtown. So we're working on that kind of housing the best we can. I do think that with the onset of ADUs and that, we'll see more people taking advantage of that. And that may help us because then people can share their property. I think the home share was a really good idea that came to being, and it's becoming very popular. So a lot of seniors are able to take advantage of that, live together, and make it more affordable. It is a real problem because our properties are so expensive here, and so to try to make building anything affordable is very, very difficult. So we're just going to have to combine different uses on our single-family properties, I believe.
Thank you. Mr. Kriowski.
The ADUs, really important, and we do make it easier permit-wise to be able to plan, pay for permits, but I think we can make it even easier, especially on some of the other developments. We have to take that into consideration, but I agree with Eric in the sense of we're Central Coast, and so it's a team effort, and to just be singled out as Pismo, and, sorry, that's a gavel. I don't know if that means I should stop talking or what, but anyway, I really believe in the ADUs and what they do for us here in Pismo, what they will do for us, and the projects that are ongoing right now, I think, address it, but we can do more, but I think it's going to be a team effort.
Thank you. Ms. Inman,
I think I'm the one who started with this question.
did you start with this?
But I like
You did
ADUs
start.
too.
No, you did start with this question. I'm sorry. It's
all
my
right.
mistake. Mr. Howell gets this question. We have a new question here. How do you feel about donations made to you from developers or lobbyists, especially before voting on their project?
So I don't know what that could possibly be referencing.
I mean, everyone's going to get the same question. It's not like necessarily directed to
Oh.
something you. How would you feel about donations made to you from developers or lobbyists, especially before voting on their project?
Well, first and foremost, I don't think that there's lobbyists that are coming out of the woodwork to make contributions to the Pismo Beach City Council meeting, or council election, rather. I think that people make contributions to campaigns because they trust people, they want to support people that share their same values and their views. And I think if you get into a game of, okay, well, why is this person making this contribution? Obviously, if there's contributions that are being made that are going to influence your decisions on a project before you, you should not be accepting it.
Okay. Ms. Reese.
Well, at the council level, I mean, I can't see that lobbyists would try to be giving to our campaigns because I'm not sure that we would do anything, that they would gain anything from that. So I've never been approached by a lobbyist. So I am pretty picky about who I accept contributions from because I don't want anyone to think that there's some connection or that someone is going to get a special okay on the council. So I don't even know how to answer that because I don't feel like the lobbyist portion of that question is appropriate at the council level. It might be at the Coastal Commission level. I did serve on the Coastal Commission a while back, and I think then it would come into play. But I think most of us really are really careful about what contributions that we accept, but campaigns are really expensive.
All right, Mr. Kriowski.
Yeah. Well, again, doing what I used to do, integrity is big. And so it's not hard to figure out someone's giving you a donation if they're looking down the road or they have a project that's pending, in front of the planning commission. So, well, the best way I could say is when I was coaching, I'd ask the young athletes, I'd say, what's the definition of honor? And the best one I've heard so far, and I've used it ever since, was this young man said, doing the right thing when nobody's around. So if you know that, that is what the donation is for, then you stay away from it. It's not good. It's not good for integrity issues, anything.
Good. Ms. Inman.
Thank you. First of all, I would never take money in a way that would bias me. If I was going to accept a donation from anyone, I am who I am. I've been this way a long time, my whole life, considering the jobs I've done in my life. And so that's number one. But when a donation comes in directly prior to, or when you see a development coming down the road or know a development, then you know that is, the timing of that is untoward. And I don't know that I would take something when I knew a project was coming before me, if I was the city council member, knowing that project was coming. The other question is, has this person ever given you money before? I mean, if that developer, and I don't think there's any lobbyists, if a developer ever gave you money before because they appreciated how you handle things, then that would have been in your past, and it wouldn't be something that's within the last 6 months or 12 months prior to their project coming forward. So I would reject it if I could see that the timing was unusual. But let's say I didn't know about a project and they gave me money and then a project came directly before, then I would potentially recuse myself or just say, I'm not going to, it's not going to bias me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next question, this will start with Ms. Reese. Question, should the council have term limits? If elected, what would your term limits be?
Well, that's apparent that I wouldn't agree with having term limits. I believe that when we campaign, when we're running for office, if the community doesn't want you there, they won't vote for you.
All right, Mr. Kriowski.
I do believe in term limits. I think there comes a time where you need to get new and fresh ideas. Again, we have them federally. So, yes, I do agree with having term limits.
All right, Ms. Inman.
I also believe in having term limits. People can get tired or stuck in certain things and just used to, I just think you can be in a job too long. Anyone can be in a job too long. I don't know off the top of my head what what I believe an appropriate term limit would be for city council. But I think we have to recognize when someone's, there are people that right now that I think in federal and state government that have been in their jobs too long and don't have the energy and capacity to do those jobs, and therefore I believe in term limits.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Howell.
I I don't think I believe in term limits. I certainly agree that that sometimes people can be in positions for too long, and that's why forums are a really helpful way of weeding people out, or and elections also should be doing that, because I mean, you run the risk of people getting voted in that have really zero experience. I mean, I'm happy to say, since, I still attend city council meetings. I'm still paying attention to what's going on in the community. I still watch the planning commission meetings. And I think it's entirely possible that people could be getting voted into office that don't have the remotest familiarity with city or of government of any sort. If you're engaged in the governing process, you should be you should have the right to run for office, no matter how long you've been in office. I mean, it would have been, to use a historical example, a crazy idea to have Roosevelt voted out of office on the eve of World War II because we had term limits.
Okay, thank you. Next question, I think this starts with Mr. Krajewski. How would you update our climate action plan during this time of climate change?
That's going to go into water. I mean, climate change it's here. So us having less of a carbon footprint is important. How we do that, though, we just can't, be draconian about it. We've got to do it nice and easy. And, the idea of having those electric bikes now it's amazing. But we need to provide safe travel for all those bikes that are on the road. And, so we promote pedestrian, bike, trolley, for gosh sakes, going back and forth. So there's things we can do, water being, the biggest, and then also, cutting edge. We're a beach town. Let's have the bicycles out there. Let's have the trails out there. Let's have, shuttles, transportation, and I think that's the right direction, the right step.
Okay. Ms. Inman?
Yes, I would update our climate action plan. I'm going to go back to my number one issue, which is water, and I didn't get to speak enough about it, but there are concerns about whether we could actually tie into Diablo Canyon for the desalination plant, but I have been researching other methodologies, and there's a process called ONECA, which is a wave-actioned desalination process where buoys are in the ocean and the energy of the waves causes the salt to be removed from the water and the water to be used. I think that because of the non-negative effect on the environment and because the wave action is something we should look at for water, for our future water needs. I think we have to look at air. There's air pollution, and the biggest pollutant is the gasoline-powered cars. I know that in 2035, it's going to be all electric cars, I believe, is what the governor did. But just, I was a school district attorney for so long, and so many parents would leave their cars running with their child in the car, waiting for the school to open or whatever. And if people just shut off their cars instead of running them, sometimes just that in itself will help our climate plan. And then solar, we need to look at solar. I would like to see more solar, like on the top of City Hall, right here. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to stop.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Howell?
Thank you. I think there's an awful lot of things that we can do to help improve our carbon footprint. Of course, I agree that we need to be encouraging electrification as much as possible. When new construction comes in, I think things need to be wired so that cars can plug in at home. One thing we don't talk about very much is, apart from the cars themselves, is our roads and our our roads are making a really large carbon footprint. I think as we do additional paving, we need to make it as climate friendly as possible. LA is experimenting with putting, not even experimenting, they have roads there that have rubberized, the rubber is in the asphalt. They have different ways of grinding up the asphalt and then just relaying it down where it was in place. We need to make sure that we're keeping up to date with our road repairs and our replacements so that we can use those means going forward to reduce our carbon footprint.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Reese?
Okay, I think that all the way around, we're trying our best to have ways of travel other than car. However, we're getting more into electric cars, which I think will help. I think everyone has to work together, the state, the county, and the communities. The city itself, I think, is beginning to do more in terms of keeping the temperatures at one level in our buildings. We're using, I think on the building in the yard, we're using solar. So little by little, in terms of city facilities, we're trying to go to a more conservative way of using our utilities. But as a community, I think probably we have to have more ways that we could use bikes. And I think the hotels are beginning to do that, so that people that are staying at the hotels don't have to get in their car to go somewhere. There's bikes available to them at the hotels. So this is a huge problem that we're all working on, the car manufacturers. I think we're providing more bicycle lanes. We've done that in Shell Beach. It's, I think as we all do our part, that we'll make a difference.
Thank you. Next question, I believe this is for Ms. Inman. If I've got that right in terms of the sequence. Do you think Pismo should imitate Grover Beach and sell marijuana in stores?
No, I don't. San Luis Obispo and Grover Beach have access to marijuana, and it's something you really have to regulate and look at, and there can be good ways to regulate those businesses, but I don't know that there's even a push to do that here. I haven't heard of any business owners wanting to come into our town to sell marijuana. It's obviously legal to sell it now, but in fact, many years ago when Colorado first allowed marijuana to be sold, I can remember my friends driving me down one of the main roads in Denver, and they said, "This is called the Green Mile now." I said, "Well, what's the Green Mile?" It's because all of the stores became marijuana shops. Not all of them, but 50% of them. So many of the regular businesses had left because they were all marijuana shops. And we need diversity of retail, and I just don't know that we will gain as a city to have marijuana shops in our city. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Howell.
Well, I certainly don't think that there's a shortage. I don't see a need to have marijuana sold in Pismo Beach. It's accessible virtually everywhere else. And especially for people with medical conditions, they can have it delivered to their house.
Ms. Reese.
I would agree that I would not be in favor of having medical or marijuana sold in stores here, and that's why we haven't done it, haven't so far had any. And it's convenient enough, the cities are close enough that there's access in Grover Beach, in San Luis Obispo. And as someone said, municipal, you know what I mean, municipal, For medical purposes,
There you
there
go.
are deliveries. So I don't agree that we should expand our business corridor for that kind of business.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kriowski.
All right, this is a kind of a complex question for me because after enforcing laws on the border, which back in my day included big-time smuggling of marijuana, and unfortunately I lost a few agents to that battle. But I'd always thought down the road when it was being legalized that it should be legalized and taxed because, you know, but again, it goes back and forth, tough for me. I know I don't want to partake just out of respect for the men and women that fought the battle. But I will point to history, and back during Prohibition, we lost more agents in gun battles trying to keep alcohol out of Canada and Mexico than we did with marijuana. My idea is if we do consider it businesses, it would be just like a full liquor license. You don't just get a full liquor license, you have to buy it. There's only so many, and it is, you have ABC who is enforcing codes, regulations, and so if we look to do something like that, it's just not Katie bar the door and hand out permits. It's, I would recommend a license that is regulated by an agency, be it ABC or be NBC or whatever. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think the next question is for Mr. Howell to start with. What ideas do you have to address challenges concerning the pier, such as police coverage and parking costs?
Well, one thing I'm really happy over is that the city has added additional enforcement officers associated with the police department, because I mean there clearly are issues with the smoking on the pier, you know, skateboarding on the pier, and the whole downtown. The upgrades, to a certain extent, are being degraded by some of the uses. And I think that we really need to tighten up. I mean, the pier could catch on fire with people smoking. You know, our benches are being destroyed by people skateboarding on it, and I would want more enforcement on all those. I'm trying to think of what the term was, but basically is quote crimes of affecting our public parks.
Ms. Reese?
Can you repeat the question? Because
Yeah.
somehow I think we got away from it, but I want to hear it again.
Yes. What ideas do you have to address challenges concerning the pier, such as police coverage and parking costs?
Okay. Again, I think a lot of the issues are because we have not had enough enforcement. And I think the issues that were talked about is that, you know, there is smoking and there's, you know, a lot of things going on at the pier that we just need to have things enforced, regulated more. In terms of parking, I think we're always going to have that issue until we have a parking structure. And in the future, we're going to have to talk about, do we have parking lots that are away from the downtown? And how do we pay for those structures? And you know, I think that we do a good job in terms of taking care of the pier, and I guess I'm a little bit at a loss because there are things like smoking that are going on, and then you're talking about parking, and that's an issue because we have so many visitors. So I'm not sure it has anything to do with the pier so much.
Okay, Mr. Kriowski?
I hate to date myself, but I remember when that parking lot was dirt. So, so I'm just excited to see it look so nice. And again, bottom line, if you're looking for enforcement, then yes, you have to make them code enforcement. It doesn't have to be a whole bunch more police officers, or just find some retired, guy like me who wants to pick up a couple bucks here and there and have some code enforcement. It's an easy fix. The parking, on the other hand, it's the analogy of how many linebackers can you shove in a VW Bug. I mean, we have an issue, but it's a good issue to have. To have people come here and parking be an issue, it is what it is. So with future development, we can look at subterranean parking but it is what it is. As far as the cost, one idea I have, because I really want to focus on the residents and small businesses, I want to see us I know we have a certain kind of permit, and someone can help me with what that is, but I'd like to see the residents have a permit to park anywhere they want downtown so they can enjoy, Pismo 24/7 like the folks coming into vacation. So that's my idea.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Inman?
Yes, I'm going to try and break it down between the pier and the parking. Yes, I think we need to tighten up the smoking issue, and there's also dogs on the pier, and I think they may defecate on the pier. So but we just had a semi-annual report from Police Chief Smith, and it seemed as though there were a lot of warnings given, but not a lot of tickets. So I would make sure that the police be more enforcement oriented, either through code compliance or through the police, and give tickets so that those people actually got affected by their misbehavior. In regard to parking, it's my understanding that the parking fees go directly into a fund to build a parking structure, and I think we need to have a parking structure in our future. I don't know the cost value of a parking structure, but the other concern I have is, yes, I've been saying that residents need to have a permit to go downtown so that they aren't paying $5 an hour to go to the businesses in downtown Pismo Beach. But the other thing that I know that the city council has passed, which I am against, is paid parking on Price Street. That's supposed to be Restaurant Row, and the city has formulated that as Restaurant Row. And if that paid parking goes in there, I think there'll be a negative effect on the businesses. There'll be pushback. If you're paying $10 an hour so you can have a nice dinner,
Thank you.
then that's not okay.
Thank you, Ms. Inman.
Thank you.
Next question, and this one starts with Ms. Reese, I believe. Do you support seawalls for oceanfront homes and properties threatened by rising seas? Do you support seawalls?
I know the Coastal Commission does not like seawalls, and I've seen very few approved by the Coastal Commission. I think practically speaking, yes, I believe in seawalls, especially those people that own property along the ocean who are having those issues. They should be allowed to rebuild their walls or repair them to protect their property. I'm a real believer in property rights, so.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kriowski?
I second that motion. Property rights, huge, but getting it through coastal commissions can be tough. But yeah, I don't want to see anybody, it's, again, climate change, everything's moving, the ocean, everything, so, sorry.
Okay,
But yes, I agree with seawalls.
all right. Ms. Inman?
Yes, I believe in seawalls as well. It's difficult with the Coastal Commission and how they analyze things, and I really don't understand why they rejected the Hyman's residence, for instance. We analyze different structures for protecting properties along the coast, using not just seawalls, but rods and a bunch of things that It's when you have private residence on the water, unless there is I'll call it an easement or a walkway or something next to the private residence to access the beach, it's hard to know why the Coastal Commission doesn't want that to be there. I know the Coastal Act, if your house was built after the Coastal Act, then that's usually the reason they say you can't do it. But how are you supposed to protect something that is going to be washed away by the ocean? So, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Howell?
Well, I think that this issue is a little bit more nuanced than has been stated tonight. I believe in some seawalls, and I don't believe in other seawalls. I of course believe in private property rights, but I also think that the public has a right to have a beach, and sometimes seawalls adversely affect the beaches. I also think that you need to look into how seawalls are going to affect surrounding houses as well. So obviously, if you have a right to a seawall, and many places do, then you have a right to a seawall, and you should be permitted that way. But if you decide you're going to build your house 5 feet away from the bluff, and then show up at the city and say, 6 months later, say, oops, I think it's going to fall into the ocean. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't believe in that, and I think that the city needs to update its local coastal plan in a way that makes it very clear for where seawalls are going to be permitted and where they're not going to be.
Excellent, thank you. We've now, I think, reached the point where we probably ought to turn to closing statements. And the ground rules provide that the closing statements go in the opposite direction of the opening statements. So I believe Mr. Howell will start, and then we'll go Ms. Inman, Mr. Krowski, and Ms. Reese. 2 minutes for each closing statement, please.
I guess I should have read the rules a little bit closer. I thought we were going the other way, but it's all good. Again, thank you to the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting on this forum, and thank all of you for coming tonight. This is an important election, locally and state and federally even. It's important that we've got the right people in office, and ones that know what they're doing, can bring positive solutions, and especially in Pismo Beach, keep Pismo Beach moving forward. Working collaboratively with our neighboring cities, with the county, with the state, and with the federal government. I think I bring, if nothing else, an awful lot of experience and the ability to get things done. So I hope you'll vote for me, Eric Howell, for the City Council on November 8th.
Thank you. Ms. Inman?
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Chamber, Pismo Beach Chamber of Commerce, and also the League of Women Voters very much for hosting this event. This has been a great experience. If there's anything I would like you to take away from the forum, it is this. As your future council person, I'm committed to listening to all of you, not just the people who are outspoken. And I promise I will assess all sides of every issue and draw my own conclusions based upon looking at all sides. I have a proven ability to collaborate with our city staff to determine a common ground, develop solutions, and analyze information objectively from my 5-year tenure on the Planning Commission, which will be an asset to the City Council as the city faces crucial decisions. We need someone who understands Pismo's traditions, values, and community character while also bringing to the table a fresh perspective. I have the energy, knowledge, and experience to work to assist in what happens in the future of our amazing city. As you know, I'm highly concerned about water and our quality of life. I am not only invested in procuring a bright future for our community, but working on our critical needs, such as water and safety, but also maintaining and enhancing our quality of life. That's why I am committed to advocating for what's right for Pismo Beach. I want to protect all of our residents and at the same time welcome our visitors who provide us with a healthy budget that keeps our city sparkling and viable. But we still need to tackle the existential issues of traffic, vehicle circulation, parking, and public safety. And I will say it again, conserving and locating more water. I am committed to being the council member that you want me to be. I want to leave you with this quote from Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a few thoughtful citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. Your vote makes a difference, and your opinion matters. I respectfully ask for your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kriowski.
A few years back, a much younger candidate sat here running for mayor. And some of you may know that the outcome was I was 2 votes short, and which a recall was paid for. And going through that recall, one of the things I noted was how when people were voting, they weren't taking the city real serious. I think one write-in for mayor was Mickey Mouse, and there was, so many that didn't vote. And it just was, to me, it was appalling. Because here we are, and in my opinion, with the most important government that you can have. This is where you grow up. This is where you raise your children. This is where you retire. And so you should take your city council and your mayor seriously. These are decisions that are going to affect you. I've given you a little bit of a background and a resume. I have experience, extensive, and I'd like to thank everybody who showed up today, candidates, audience. Thank you so much for taking the time and being interested in your city government. I've got my resume in front of you. I want you to look at it, and if you want to hire me, I would appreciate your vote, and I will be working for you then. So thanks again for coming, and vote. I only need 2 more.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Reese.
Well, I too want to say thank you to the League of Women Voters and the Chamber of Commerce for sponsoring this and monitoring it. It's real important. I know it's a lot of work, but I really appreciate it. It really gives us an opportunity to directly answer the questions for the public. I want to use my proven leadership qualities and experience to protect the positive things we have accomplished and move your priorities forward over the next 4 years. I'm a 30-year resident here in Pismo Beach, and I have been on the other side of the fence, and I understand I have a good understanding of what the needs are and what everybody wants. They want a community they can raise their children in. They want a community that they can grow old in. And I believe that have been very good on the council in listening. And in fact, 3 of the members of the city council have endorsed me, Mayor Waggy and council members Guthrie and Newton. I think that it shows that I have the ability of working with the rest of the council and moving all of your priorities forward, and I would appreciate your vote on November 8th.
Thank you. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, we would very much like to thank the candidates for putting themselves forward and answering all these questions in a thoughtful and thorough way. You are all, it seems to me, very well qualified in your backgrounds that you bring to try to help this community move forward. And it's outstanding that individuals like you are willing to do that in this day and age. Also, we'd like to thank the Pismo Beach Chamber of Commerce very much for making this and hosting this and making this forum available. And the League has enjoyed the opportunity to be the moderator in conduct the forum. And most importantly, we thank the members of the audience who have taken time out from their day to come here and to listen, both in person and on the video cameras, so that you can be more informed and to ask all these questions, because that was the heart of the whole proceeding, were the questions that you raised. And if we didn't get to your question, I apologize, but I think we covered a lot of good things. So if you could give a hand of applause for the candidates and for everyone else, thank you. And don't forget to vote.